والسلام على سيد الحق أجمعين أبو القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The occultation of the awaited Imam Mahdi in Shia Islam refers to a belief in a messianic figure, otherwise known as we mentioned, Imam Mahdi, who in the Shia thought is an infallible male descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and who was born but disappeared and will one day return and fill the world with justice and peace. According to the teachings of the Shia, Imam al-Mahdi has had two occultations. There was the minor occultation, which lasted 69 years, and the major occultation, which continues from the time in which he entered it until the present day. During the minor occultation, Imam al-Mahdi communicated with the Shia through 4 different representatives or deputies. However, during this current major occultation, this communication does not exist, and the Shia must refer to the scholars and the ulama for their religious needs. Now, again, according to the Shia belief, Allah never leaves this earth without His deputy, the ultimatum and an infallible Ma'sum Imam alaykum as-salam. After the martyrdom of the 11th Imam, the 12th Imam inherited this position, and by Allah's knowledge and will, the 12th Imam disappeared from sight, although he is still alive and shall reappear one day to free the world from violence and the injustice that fills it, in order to place justice and fairness in our world instead. In order to explain the occultation or the Ghaiba, the Shia researchers and scholars have written numerous different books about this issue. The most famous of which is al-Numani's book on occultation, which is called Al-Ghaiba, and Sheikh al-Tusi's book on occultation called Kitab al-Ghaiba. Now, we have a narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen who has said that the best worship of the believer is to have anticipation for the reappearance of the awaited Imam Mahdi. However, in terms of the reappearance, Imam Ali has said that among the signs of the return of the Mahdi include rulers who are disbelievers, untrusted treasurers of money, and dissolute officials who control the rule of society. And we can see this today, as we have seen in history as well. Imam Ali then goes on to explain a little bit further about the terms of the reappearance of the Mahdi. He says that the merchants increase their prices, but their profits decrease. Interest in money in banks spreads. Illegitimate sons will be everywhere. Adultery increases. Relatives deny each other. The crescent is regarded as greater than what it is. And lastly, Amir al-Mu'mineen mentions that a woman is satisfied with a woman and a man is satisfied with a man. Of course, what I'm referring to today is what you know as LGBT movement. This is what the Imam has said himself is one of the signs of the reappearance of the Imam coming closer. A man then said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, "What will we do when such a time comes, when this is so prevalent in society that we cannot do anything else except witness it with our eyes and be forced to accept it?" Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "Escape. Escape. The justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still spread amongst this ummah as long as what? As long as the ulama do not incline to those rulers, and as long as the pious believers still forbid the dissolute from committing sins. If they do not do so, and they are then alerted and then say there is no God but Allah, Allah will say from on His throne, you have said this falsely and you are not truthful people." So before we talk about our duties during the Ghaiba of the Imam, it's important to know why the Imam went into occultation in the first place. We, as the followers of the Ahlul Bayt and our scholars, have said and believe that all of the reasons and the secrets for the occultation of the Imam are not fully known. However, we have narrations and ahadith which emphasize on 3 different things, 3 different reasons in why the Imam went into occultation. The first one was to test the faithful people among society. Based on all of our Islamic sources, including the Quran and ahadith, testing the creation and choosing the righteous ones of them is one of the constant traditions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we know, life is full of tests for pious people and for the mu'mins, and for people who use it to nurture their faith, to nurture patience, and to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands, and reach perfection by flourishing their talents and abilities in dealing with these tests. Imam al-Mahdi's occultation is a means from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to test us first of all. As the facade begins to fall from the people with unstable belief in Allah, their doubts and their uncertainty begins to take over. And while those who have belief and faith rooted deeply in their hearts, they are the ones who shall become more experienced and more worthy in faith, and they will reach higher levels of piety and divine reward as a result, and they bear the troubles of the time awaiting the Imam. One of the narrations from Imam Musa ibn Ja'far clearly expresses that Allah tests His creatures by occultation, by the Imam going into Ghaibah. And the narrations declare that testing people in the time of occultation is one of the most difficult tests that we are given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the troubles of this test, for example, are for two different reasons. The first is that when the period of occultation becomes lengthy, and when it lasts for hundreds of years, as it has done just now, many people will begin to face doubts about their religion. They will face uncertainties about their faith. Some people will doubt, for example, the birth of Imam al-Mahdi, or the question of him even being a real person, whilst others will question whether he is actually alive or not. But only the honest people who have already passed all of the previous tests in regard to this and who have acquired a deep and thorough understanding of religion will preserve their belief about the Imam. There's a very long hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, mentions this issue. And he says, and this is Rasulullah by the way, he says, the Mahdi shall disappear from the sight of the Shia and his followers, and no one shall stay stable on their belief except those who Allah has put their hearts in the path of faith and made them worthy. Secondly, the troubles and the pressures of the end times, in which we can even see the beginnings of them appear around us today, they will start to change the people to the extent that preserving faith and religion will be such a hard thing to do. It will be such a hard objective to achieve for parents to instill faith deeply in the hearts of their children, for example, and the faith in which people previously had held on to will seriously be in danger and will slowly wither away from people's hearts. The second reason in philosophy for the occultation of the Imam was to save the Imam's life. If we look into some of the other narrations that we have, we see that they suggest that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved the Imam from the danger of being killed by occultation, for had he appeared from the very beginning of his life, then he would have been killed. Now, based on this same logic, if he appears before the time is right and before the time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands him to do so, then his life will still be in danger and he shall fail to fulfill his godly objectives, of course, which are bestowed upon him, and the great reformations in which he was created to achieve. The third reason for occultation was to be free from accepting the leadership of the illegitimate tyrant or ruler. Again, according to some of the rawayat that we have, the 12th Imam shall not recognize any oppressive government, even as a dissimulation. He is not obliged to perform the concept of taqiyya, for example, for any leader or for any king, and he shall not live under the flag of any oppressor. He will perform Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rulings with no compromise, no concern or no secrecy. In other words, he will be in occultation until he rises, and then he will be free from allegiance or loyalty to any leader or any government. Now, we talked at the beginning about one of the narrations from Amir al-Mu'mineen, which talks about anticipation. The concept of anticipation in awaiting the reappearance of the Imam begins to destroy the darkness which exists within the depths and the interiors of a person, and in his unconscious self, in his nafs. It also serves a purpose to illuminate the shutters of light and brightness of a man's inner self, and in this way it opens the door to perfection for him. This is quite a big statement, so let me explain it a little bit more. Anticipation is a state of readiness in all of the necessary ways, and attracts man's inner attention to the world of purity, to the world of sincerity and of light. The world where all the satanic and evil potentials become destroyed when a man anticipates the reappearance of the Imam. And if we consider and we look at this fact, this idea, this concept, we can say that the person who holds extraordinary powers is the one who has taken steps towards the elevated stages on the path of anticipation, of waiting for the Imam to reappear. Because as we know, the government of the Imam is a heavenly and an extraordinary one, the understanding of which is beyond our comprehension and human capability itself. And the companions of the Imam must assemble around him and make themselves present in the front line to assist him, and be men and women of action, and have the necessary powers, the necessary faith within them to submit to the Imam's orders. And of course those orders are the ones that come from Allah Himself. There are many different ways then in which we can gain awareness of the issue of anticipation, which we just mentioned, and in learning and expressing its greatness to others. I'll mention just quickly some of the important ways in which the society as a whole can become drawn to the issue of anticipation. First, we need to become familiar with the position of wilayah and awareness of the greatness of Imam Mahdi. Secondly, we need to be familiar with the amazing effects of anticipation in waiting and hastening the reappearance of the Imam and its complete meaning. Thirdly, we need to be familiar with the characteristics and the qualities of the companions of Imam Mahdi, who reached the highest stages of anticipation and benefited from great spiritual powers, and they followed the orders of the Imam as well. Lastly, we need to be familiar with the world, with mankind's future, the significant changes and the happenings in the lives of people at the time of the reappearance. Now, if you look in societies where religion plays no role and people are expectant of no great future, they begin to despair in life. You'll see murder, bloodshed, suicide, for example, becoming much more frequently witnessed. If you look at, for example, the rate of suicide in this country, it's much greater than that of any other Islamic country. This is because people see such negative factors such as poverty, oppression, tyranny, breaking of laws. They see all of this and they fail to find any solutions or any means of escape. They do not have the faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or religion, something which Allah has put on this earth for them to cling on to and to put their faith in. Because of this, they become entangled and they become caught in the difficulties of destructive despair, and they become hopeless and they become depressed. And this is because, of course, as we mentioned, they have no hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the future, and they view these issues such as, for example, suicide as the way out of these problems. And by committing these acts, they not only draw their present life and their hereafter and the akhirah into ruin, but also the futures of their wives, of their husbands, of their children, of their relatives as well. However, the person who has the feeling of anticipation, the person who has that hope which they cling on to within himself, and at every moment is hopeful for the shining light of wilayah to engulf the entirety of the universe, such a person is not even capable or willing to create such acts or do such acts, and they are not willing as a result to destroy the lives of other people as a result. Therefore, the issue of anticipation of the reappearance of the Imam is a relief for that person, and it prepares a base foundation from them to escape from what? Despair, depression, and ruin. One of the narrations we have, someone came to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far again about the occultation of the Imam, and the Imam said to them, do you not know that anticipation of the reappearance of the Imam is part of the reappearance? The man says, I would not have known this if you had not told me. The Imam said, yes, anticipation of the reappearance of the Imam is part of the reappearance. Unless we have anticipation and hope in the reappearance, then the Imam won't come. It's as simple as that, and this is what the Imam says. So, what is the lesson to learn from this? Don't forget about the reappearance of the Imam. Don't make the Imam something which you just remember all of a sudden in the majlis. Make sure that you start your day with the remembrance of the Imam and you end your day with the remembrance of the Imam. Make sure throughout the day, whenever you're conducting actions, make sure, of course, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's satisfaction is what you please, but also remember the anticipation in order to hasten the reappearance of the Imam. The concept of waiting during the occultation. Does intidhar or waiting mean to just wait without doing anything to reform or improve society? No. The intidhar, which is elevated to the level of jihad and shahada, for example, is the intidhar which follows the love of the Imam, and it is the intidhar which is similar, for example, of a lover waiting for his beloved person to come back to him. Let me give you a practical example. When one of your family members or your friends goes to have a holiday in another country, for example, we begin to long to see them, we begin to wait for their return. But this waiting doesn't mean that we don't have any connection to that person whilst they are away, whilst they are absent from us. We try to do everything possible to make his stay in that foreign place happy. We call him, we check up on him, we prepare for when they come back. When we know that that person is going to come back, we begin preparing the facilities for them so that he'll be happy when he returns back. And the true sense in waiting for the reappearance of the present Imam has a similar meaning to this. Waiting for the Imam to reappear does not mean that we should just let the affairs of ourselves, our family, our society, our community go from bad to worse. No. Hoping that the Imam would come and reform all the corruption and order without us doing anything is meaningless. If our waiting is based on the true belief in and the knowledge of the Imam, we will try to reform our behaviours, our way of living, our way of thinking, and we will try and shape the society around us and influence, for example, the political situation at the time so that we can prepare a basis for the Imam coming back. Lastly, we need to have knowledge. Knowledge, or ma'rifah, means to be acquainted with knowing something. For example, the knowledge of the Prophet means studying his biography and understanding his claims of prophethood, his aims, his goals, his teachings, for example. The very first duty of the Shi'as, according to the narrations and the words of the Imams themselves, is to know the Imam of their time. But what does that mean? Does it mean that we only know that the Imam was born on the 15th of Sha'ban and that he had 4 representatives and then he went into it? No, that's not enough. There are, I'm going to summarize just very quickly to end, 14 responsibilities that we need to have in regards to the knowledge of the Imam. First, we need to know that there's the need for Imam, or a hujjah, or a proof of God. In other words, the significance of the divine guidance which takes the form of imamah after the finality of Nubuwwah of the Prophet. Secondly, we need to know the reality of imamah and wilayah. Then we need to know the evidence of the birth for the 12th Imam so that we can prove from our own religion that the Imam is someone who was born and who was alive. Then we need to know the proofs that the present Imam is the son of Imam Hassan al-Askari as-salam. Then we need to know the important events of the lesser and the minor occultation. Then we need to know the causes of the occultation. We need to know, is it possible for a man to live over 1,000 years? We need to know the teachings, the messages of the present Imam for his Shi'as today, and so on and so forth. And if you look back to the lectures which I gave over the last 9 days, you can link all of them to the reappearance of the Imam. First, we have the status of women. As we know, along with 313 companions of the Imam, there will be 50 women who will be of equal status and who will help the Imam in just as many important ways as the 313 males do. Then we look back to the importance of taqleed, which we talked about. As Imam al-Mahdi says himself, as for the events which may occur in the future when you may need guidance on religious matters, refer to the transmitters of our hadith, who are my hujjah on you and I am the hujjah of Allah to all of you. Then we have marriage, the concept and the importance of marriage in raising our families to be the supporters and the servants and the loyal followers of the awaited Imam. Then we have, as we mentioned the other day, revolutionary Shia Islam. Don't remain quiet in the face of oppression. Don't remain quiet when you see tyranny taking place in front of you. Stand up, make sure that you're one of the people that the Imam would be proud of, one of the people who would give up everything in their lives to make a revolutionary sacrifice and to be one of the followers of the Imam. And lastly, and most importantly, as we mentioned yesterday, learn from the message, the revolution and the principles of the revolution of Ashura and of Imam al-Hussein. Again, not staying quiet and silent in the face of oppression. When you see tyranny and evil and an illegitimate ruler discarding Islamic principles, do not stay quiet. Raise your voice, be one of the people who makes that sacrifice for that change, even if it means sacrificing your family, monetary life, anything in your material world. And this is one of the few ways in which we can gain closer to the Imam of our time and hasten his reappearance. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.